I've taken the time to study the All-22 coaches film from the Bills preseason game against the Giants, and I'm sharing my top takeaways with you today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I am your host of Locked On Bills. Want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate y'all being here very, very much. I'd also like to invite you to subscribe or follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time to share my top takeaways from studying this Bills-Giants All-22 film. And folks, usually we do this much closer to when a game ends, but the NFL didn't make the film available until Wednesday morning. And so it threw off the entire balance of my week because I budget about 10 hours on Mondays for the All-22 film review and producing the content around it, and dropping it on Wednesday made things very, very challenging for me. But we got it in, and I'm excited today to share with you what really stood out to me. And the focus of the watch and the focus of what I'm going to talk about today is really on individual player performances. I'm not really going to get into stuff about game script or game plans or overall execution or why a certain function of the team was good or why it wasn't. That's not really interesting in preseason. It's about individual performances. And I also want to attack this conversation through the lens of the draft class. And within that, we'll get to plenty of talking points about what the tape revealed to me. So the foundation will be discussing each draft pick, and through that, we'll get to other big talking points. So let's do it. Let's dive in. And I want to start with the Bills' first-round pick, cornerback Maxwell Hairston. He didn't play, but that doesn't mean there's not stuff to discuss, because what became clear to me in watching the Bills defense and the intent of the style of defense that I believe they want to be, which will include a lot more man coverage, which will include a lot more 5-man pressures, even 6-man pressures. And that style is optimized. The defense will be optimized when Maxwell Hairston's skill set is present. They're going to put these corners a little bit more on an island. And Hairston's athleticism and his ball skills should translate well to that. So the point is, Tre'Davious White is going to hold that position until Maxwell Hairston's ready. And with the injury, that's probably a little longer than we originally anticipated. Trey White, I think, is a functional player. Functional. I don't think his skill set right now is going to be ideal for what the Bills want to do defensively, because Trey does have some speed limitations. And because of that, he has to play with a little bit extra cushion. And with Christian Benford as your CB1, there's going to be a lot of targets that are going to go the other way. And so I think Trey has to play a careful style of football to make sure that he's not a liability out there. He's going to give up some stuff. But if he can hold this down until Maxwell is ready, I get really excited about Hairston and how his athletic profile can unlock really what this Bills defense wants to be. So I think the Bills will have to probably use Trey White a little bit more in press coverage to get those early jams and help the quarterback move on in the progression. But as things elongate, and if the pass rush doesn't get there, I think Trey White's going to have some challenges this year. Let's move on to the defensive tackles. We'll talk TJ Sanders and Deone Walker here. I really like what I saw from both of them. For TJ Sanders, the pass rush really popped. I think you saw the traits that got you excited about him at South Carolina show up in this game. Playing behind his hands. Super explosive. Flexible. Powerful at the point of attack. It really showed up. It's unfortunate the touchdown that Dane Jackson gave up to little Jordan Humphrey, the bomb that Jackson Dart threw down the field. TJ Sanders destroyed that right guard, but Dart got the ball off before Sanders could sack him. But he was pressured and he took a shot. And that was a really exciting rep where he showed a two-hand swipe into a rip move that was really effective. And you saw him work those techniques throughout the game and absolutely looked like a guy that has the potential to be a havoc wreaker. And the Bills released their depth chart entering this second preseason weekend. I think you should always take it with a grain of salt. But one of the changes on that depth chart was TJ Sanders went from third team to second team. And I think there was a lot of optics always with that. And had Dwayne Carter and Larry Ogunjobi as a second group of D tackles. And I think that's more the team putting the more experienced players first. But now that we have a game, they swapped it. They put TJ Sanders second team and Dwayne Carter went to third team. Talk about Dwayne Carter more in just a second. I was really impressed with Deone Walker as well as a run defender and a pass rusher. Now, again, we're talking about going up against the second and third group of the Giants offensive line, and they're not really known for their stout interior offensive line. So that's something to be mindful of discussing Walker and Sanders. But Walker, that upper body power that he has, powerful hands, the mass up top in particular, the movement skills that he has, you saw that show up as a run defender and a pass rusher. I mean, there were times in that game where he was really able to dictate reps with the length and the power and the mass up top. And it's a really good start. And it really makes me intrigued to where Deone Walker can develop and maybe get rid of some bad weight up top, develop the lower half, get some strength in the lower half, and be able to be less reliant on the upper body and the hands and really put the whole thing together to maximize his power. And if he's capable of doing what he showed, and then he adds that lower body strength, this guy can be a really effective player. So I'm really encouraged with both of those guys. And on the flip side, I find myself very discouraged in Dwayne Carter. You know, I haven't been a huge fan of what he's put on tape. Thought he struggled mightily as a rookie. Give him a little bit of grace because he is a rookie. He had the wrist injury, but whether it's been training camp or this game, I just don't find him to be an effective player. He doesn't have a lot of feel. His anchor against the run is poor. And I mean, I think Sanders and Walker are comfortably better options. And it creates for a very interesting conversation because I think that we need to start considering Zion Logue as a player, as a one-tech A-gap defender that brings a lot more than Dwayne Carter. And Dwayne Carter right now is being asked to major in the nose tackle role. And look, I know that the Bills have their own preferences with prototypes at each position. But when you're talking about nose tackle, anchoring at the point of attack, resetting the line of scrimmage, Daquan Jones is the best player the Bills have at that. And then it's Zion Logue. Zion Logue's a guy that really caught my eye at training camp. I thought he was really solid against the Giants. And I know that there's going to be a long leash because Dwayne Carter's a third-round pick entering his second year. But if we're talking about like who's actually earning it, who's putting the best tape out there, Dwayne Carter's low on the list here at D tackle. I think he's ahead of Marcus Harris and Casey Rogers. But I'd put, of course, Oliver Jones, Sanders, Walker, Logue, Ogunjobi ahead of what Carter's putting out there. And so I'm curious to see how the Bills deal with this. And then, of course, what it means when Larry Ogunjobi comes back from suspension. So very encouraged with Sanders and Walker, discouraged with Carter, and intrigued by Zion Logue. All right, on the other side of it, we're going to get into Landon Jackson, Jordan Hancock, Dorian Strong, all kinds of stuff. Folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. Fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat, get your draft board ready, and buckle up for a season filled with breakouts, busts, and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year I'm playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too. Whether it's your first ever league or a veteran that's in your 1 millionth league. I've been using Yahoo Fantasy for years, and I love how smooth the draft day experience is. It's easy to set up a league. The mobile app is awesome, and the message boards are really fun for all the smack talk. To celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season right around the corner, now is the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. All right, folks, let's talk Landon Jackson, Bills' third-round pick, defensive end out of Arkansas. He was quiet. There's no doubt about it. I wanted to see a lot more out of him during his NFL debut. I mean, you could see that he's got some power. He's got some movement skills. But ultimately, we got to develop the technique here. A lot of body-to-body reps. And what I mean by that is, particularly as a pass rusher, you got to attack a side. You got to attack an edge of an offensive lineman. And he's trying to play through everybody and just not really getting the timing down with his rush plan to be effective. And so, look, it's his NFL debut. There's always going to be some guys that come out and start fast and others that start slow. And I think Landon Jackson looks like a guy to me that's starting a bit slow. Of course, there's the big mental mistake that he had lining up in the neutral zone, which took away Jordan Hancock's interception, which was disappointing. And so you have some physical deficiencies here in terms of where the technique needs to be. You have some mental mistakes, and you realize that he's got some work to do. And we take it for what it is. I mean, it's his NFL debut in a preseason game. So that's a player that I'm looking for, really over these next 2 weeks to take some steps here, because this defensive end rotation, of course, is Rousseau, Bosa, and Epinesa as your top three. But with Michael Hoyt on the shelf until after 6 games, right? He's suspended. You're going to have either Javon Solomon or Landon Jackson getting some snaps at defensive end, not a ton, but some, and a good amount of special teams work. And right now, I don't have a lot of conviction that either is the better option. So I'm curious to see how that kind of plays itself out and who's going to get those snaps until Michael Hoyt gets back. And I want to see more out of both Jackson and Solomon. Speaking of Michael Hoyt, my goodness, I would argue that he was the best player on the field for the Bills in that game. There were moments watching him on tape where it just had me cackling with what he can do. You could see some of the creativity that the Bills will have with Michael Hoyt and allowing him to shoot gaps and take advantage of his size and athleticism, allowing him to play from a 2-point in some instances, playing him both sides, doing a lot of different things. And I thought his pass rush was phenomenal, the way he got off the ball, the way he worked different counters, the tenacity to fight off of contact and get his hands up. And I mean, the guy was terrific. And then he had some phenomenal run defense reps, and one in particular that was just insane, where he's the edge setter and he winds up having one blocker on one hand, another on the other, and he just holds them up for like a long time. That allows Joe Andreessen to fill a window and make a tackle for loss. And it's like, dude, that's different. He was awesome out there, and I'm sad that we don't get to watch him for the first 6 weeks of the season, but what a boost that guy's going to be to this defense when the Bills got out of the bye and they play Carolina. And hopefully, the rest of the season, this guy is showing us this unique skill set and making a lot of plays. But I feel some type of way about Michael Hoyt after watching that game, and I felt it live, and then you can't help but gravitate your eyes towards him when he's on the field, at least during that Giants game. So I'm very excited about Michael Hoyt. But Landon Jackson looking for some growth here over the next 2 weeks of the preseason. Let's talk Jordan Hancock, 5th-round pick, defensive back out of Ohio State. The big conversation with him is versatility, and he really played safety in this game. I thought he was really effective. He played most of his reps as a deep safety. He did have some lower alignments, but really didn't play in the slot. That really wasn't on the menu for him in this game. And so, of course, he had the interception, which was, hey, he's the one high middle of the field safety. It's a bit of an overthrow. Take away the football. He did. Unfortunately, it was taken away. But he had some good plays, triggering downhill, fitting the run, making some tackles, also coming down and taking on contact and being firm and kind of spilling runs back inside. I thought his processing speed looked really sound. Very physical player. And I think the word that I'd come back to describe Hancock's performance is comfortable. And all things considered, I think that's a really exciting word to come out of this watch from, considering he's a guy that they've been playing at a lot of different spots. And so he's not like overly repped in any one area. For him to play almost exclusively a safety role and be comfortable, I think is pretty impressive. And so I find myself encouraged with Jordan Hancock. I'm also encouraged by Cam Lewis. I thought Cam Lewis was terrific in this game. And so I'm sure eventually Hancock will have his day where he's playing over Cam Lewis, but Cam Lewis was on the field as a safety with the starters. Rapp and Bishop didn't play, so it was Damar Hamlin and Cam Lewis at safety. And Cam Lewis's downhill trigger was phenomenal. Fitting the run against duo, running the alley, making tackles. You could tell that there's a comfort in what he's doing out there. And, both of those guys, I thought made a case that they should both be on the roster. And I think they will ultimately. But despite the emergence of Jordan Hancock and what he can be on this team, I still think Cam Lewis is going to be tough to unseat as the dime DB, the primary backup to Taron Johnson, and maybe even like the fourth safety. So I'm excited about Jordan Hancock, but Cam Lewis is not going down without a fight. And I think there'll be room for both of them this year. Let's talk about Jackson Hawes, tight end, 5th-round pick. The blocking showed up. Had a really high impact block. The Bills actually ran a trap play, and I'm pretty sure Osiris Torrance pulled and trapped the defensive end, and that required Jackson Hawes to block down, and he washed out that defensive tackle, big old dude, and did a phenomenal job of creating torque and leverage, and then getting his outside hand placed on the shoulder to really pin the dude inside to seal that inside part of the lane. And then you had a great kick out by Osiris Torrance, and Ty Johnson had a pretty explosive run. So you saw some of that blocking ability show up. He did have the drop, which is kind of the deal with Jackson Hawes, is the blocking profile is really exciting, but he's not a super polished pass catcher, and it was an uncontested play. He dropped the ball. One thing that I found to be really fascinating about Jackson Hawes' performance is that he didn't play any special teams reps, none at all. He was on one like field goal kick, but I thought he would get some opportunities to be involved in all phases of special teams. And so that was a little surprising to me, because I think that's going to be part of his role. So that's something to just file away and see if he doesn't get any special teams reps in preseason, then that's really interesting to me. All right, coming up next, Dorian Strong, Chase Lunt, Caden Prather other standouts, the quarterback battle, the Bills made a roster move. We got a loaded third segment for you. Folks, be sure to stick with me. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Do you have subscriptions that you forgot you're paying for? Well, you can link all your accounts to Monarch and immediately spot those subscriptions that maybe you're not even using, and you can cancel those and save yourself some money. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL. All right, let's talk Dorian Strong here. Bills corner, Virginia Tech 6th-round pick. I thought he was mostly good. He did give up the touchdown reception. It's a tough play. He's one-on-one with a receiver. They run an RPO, and the receiver is able to get an inside release and catch a touchdown. I'm not sure if he was expecting some help from the linebacker who kind of bit on the run and vacated some space, but he's got to play tighter there in the red zone. But otherwise, he was challenged down the field on another play. He was one-on-one. A really good job of maintaining vertical leverage, driving on the ball, and getting a pass breakup, which was a good play. He did have a missed tackle, but there were also some good physical plays against the run as well. So some good, some bad. And I think overall he was pretty effective. He got runs. He got run as the gunner on the punt team, which I didn't find him to be super effective, but it was notable to me that he got those opportunities. And when you look at this cornerback situation, I think that there's two spots for Dane Jackson, Dorian Strong, and Jamarcus Ingram. And based on playing time, Jackson and Strong are ahead of Ingram. And so it looks like Ingram, as the incumbent, is might be on the outside looking in, but we'll see how the rest of this preseason goes. Chase Lunt, offensive lineman out of UConn, 6th-round pick, played 27 snaps at left tackle. And he played 16 snaps at right guard, which is notable because this dude played exclusively right tackle in college. So his first ever game action at left tackle, first ever game action at guard as well. So the story with Chase Lunt is his wingspan is poor. He's got 77 3/4-inch wingspan, which is 0 percentile for offensive tackles. For interior offensive linemen, it's 20th percentile. So, I think he does need to get some chances to play inside, which he did. And what I liked most about Chase Lunt was his set points in pass protection. I thought he did a good job getting into his pass sets and framing. And then you know that he's got short arms and doesn't have a ton of length. So you could see the emphasis that he had with shooting his hands quickly, getting hands on and trying to control reps that way. And there were a lot of good instances of him getting those hands fit, winning with first contact, and then, leveraging and maintaining the depth of the pocket or the width of the pocket, depending on if he was playing inside or outside. I will say, though, that there were some instances where that didn't happen, and you saw that he had to work overtime to try to win the block. And I think that's okay. I think to come out of his initial debut at left tackle and right guard and realize how he's working his technique and appreciating the footwork, and he had some really good stuff on the move. He had a really good the Bills ran like a pin and pull, and they ran pin and pull with Dan Feeney and Mike Edwards. And then they also pulled Chase Lunt from left tackle. He had a great lead block into the hole. And so that was my favorite thing about him at UConn was how good he was on the move. And so you saw a lot of that show up, which is good. I still think he's going to have to figure out how to make his frame work in the NFL. And I thought you saw some good positive steps in his debut. And again, it wasn't without flaw, but I am encouraged with where he's at. I'm not sure if he's going to be an option to put out there year one, but if the Bills can retain him and continue to work with him, I think there's a chance he can be a good depth player. Wide receiver Caden Prather, 7th-round pick, didn't play, but there's wide receiver storylines to get into. Let's start with Josh Palmer. Route running is there, folks. It's absolutely there. Both of his receptions, you saw outstanding work in the release package, outstanding nuance with how he works his route stem, gets in and out of breaks. He's super quarterback friendly with how he bends back to the football. And I am really fired up about what he's going to do. They had him play side blocking quite a bit. He's gonna factor big into this offense, and I think he's already the Bills' best route runner on the outside, and I think that's going to be very important for this offense. So really fired up for Josh Palmer, and I'm fired up for Tyrell Shavers. Thought he had 3 spectacular plays. The 2 that you saw, one was they're both the post route early for it was a 12 yards, phenomenal release, really seamless vertical cut, and then just establishing that leverage. And he's so long, right? He's so long and lanky that it really expands his catch radius and makes him gives him a lot of room to catch passes. But he created good separation and ran away on the seam or the vertical seamless vertical cut. And then on the deep shot, really good job of taking advantage of that cushion and off man coverage and setting up that break and being able to kind of run right by that dude. He's not a burner down the field, but if you can understand angles, right, and how that corner was kind of in a half turn, and then you attack that blind spot and cut across, and you can just kind of pull away. It's exactly what he did. And he should have had another one, actually, on a play that Mike White got sacked. Mike White, if he's more decisive, Tyrell had vertical separation on the corner, and Mike White ate the ball and got sacked, and he had plenty of time to get the ball out. So there was some really, really good vertical route running from Tyrell Shavers in this game, and just might sneak onto this 53 as wide receiver 5 or 6. So he's doing his thing here. I'm excited to see how he fares the rest of the preseason. Real quick on QB2 battle, I think Mitch Trubisky is ahead. I thought he played better than Mike White, and I thought they both had their moments, but Trubisky showed some of the physical upside that he has that I value in a QB2. And then shout out Frank Gore Jr. I don't think there's a place for him in this roster. He's small and very athletically limited, but he's effective every time he touches the football, and that continued in this preseason game. Real quick, a couple of roster moves. The Bills signed defensive end Nelson Caesar, and then also tight end Matt Sokol, who was just released and brought back. So those guys on the roster. Jalen Virgil and defensive end Justin Hollins were waived injured. So if you're waived / injured, that means you go on waivers. And if you're unclaimed, they go back to the Bills injured reserve list. And then there's a really good chance that there's an injury settlement that will be agreed to, and then they'll be released, which is exactly what happened with Balin Spector. And then as far as bringing Nelson Caesar, the defensive end, the Bills have really been churning that last defensive end spot over the last few weeks. Cameron Klein was brought in. Justin Hollins was brought in. Now you have Nelson Caesar. I think what the Bills are trying to do here is get familiar with some possibilities for the practice squad. Right now, I think every defensive end on the team is going to make it, except for Parrish Shand out of LSU. I'm not sure that he's a super intriguing guy for the practice squad. So getting familiar with some of these defensive ends to see, hey, can we upgrade that spot? I think that's what the Bills are doing with that position group right now and getting a look at some guys. I plan on having a Saturday episode this week. What I want to do with that is get into any of the storylines from the Bills-Bears joint practice, which is happening on Friday, which we should also get clarity on what the Bills intend to do with their starters, and then that'll tell me what will be interesting to look at from the Bills' perspective on Sunday night against the Bears. So we want to talk storylines from joint practices, what the Bills' intentions are, and what that makes interesting about watching Sunday night. And then the Bears have already said they're going to play their starters. I'm not sure how long, but Ben Johnson, their head coach, said that they want reps. So I'm guessing they're going to play a decent amount. And so we'll kind of get into what's interesting about the Bears on Sunday night as well. So that's my intent, is to have a Saturday episode for you. And then don't forget, the Bills do play Sunday night at 8 o'clock against the Bears. Bills squad goes live right after the game. So that'll stay up late with us if you want. Otherwise, you can catch it when you wake up. It'll be available, of course, on YouTube and in the audio feeds, and you'll get my game reaction as well. And we'll get into this rhythm of the Bills playing games and getting ready for them and reacting to them and talking through this season. So don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. We'd love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills. I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.